I'm going to be calling a series of my video podcasts. Hey, Snart, how's it going? And what I'm going to be doing is just talking about my career as a comic book artist and how I became a comic book professional. So we're gonna have my logo here, podcast, Draw With Me, which was given to me by one of my students. And here, I'm just gonna erase this and then change it. Like for the first episode, there'll be one. And the second episode will be 2, 3, 4, 5, and so forth. So we're gonna keep it like that. So I'm gonna start talking about how I got into working as a professional artist while I'm working on a commission. So this one here is a commission piece that I was working on. One of the clients asked me to draw this, and then I was drawing a female figure that it was going to be for one of their characters. But after when I was done sketching this out, they didn't like it, so I had to scrap it. So instead of "Hey Julio, how's it going? Happy Thanksgiving to you." So the person who asked me to work on this decided they don't want this pose. So I'm just gonna like post it on Instagram and social media and Facebook to see if anyone else wanted it. The client actually asked me to draw a different pose, which is this one. So this is what they're gonna get. But someone on Instagram contacted me and asked me to draw one of their characters in this, so I can reuse this pose. So the character that they're gonna do is let me open up this character, also a character that they created. So I'm gonna move this back a little bit so we can see more in detail of the character. So this podcast is going to be where I talk about my career in comic books. So if any of you are aspiring comic book artists or a artist that wants to become a professional artist, maybe listening to my videos will help you along the way to become a art professional artist, like what to do and how to do that. So we're gonna dial this way back while I work on this commission piece. I started out as an artist, but I wasn't a professional comic book artist when nobody's a professional artist when they started to draw. All I did was draw on my own. I was really good at doing artwork in high school. Actually, let me start drawing this figure while I talk. I was really good ever since kindergarten. I remember my kindergarten teacher would have meetings with my parent during teacher parent conference, and the teacher would say, "Your son is very good at drawing." And I remember drawing back then during kindergarten class. So I was drawing really, really young at a really young age. And I would draw pretty much all my life through kindergarten, middle school, high school. I always drew. I got in trouble for drawing a lot. I would draw in college. And I remember a teacher would throw like chalkboard erasers at me because they told me to not draw, because I would draw like caricatures of teachers and classmates. I would pass them around, and the teacher didn't like that. And he one time it was my so I went to San Francisco State, and I have a business degree in the business marketing, and during some of those courses I took a class called economics, and I wasn't really that interested in economics. I took business marketing because I wanted to continue doing some kind of artwork as an artist. And I imagine myself as when I grew up and graduate, I would work in a little cubicle where I can just draw a lot of stuff. So San Francisco State was a good school to go with business classes, but I still wanted to be a artist of some sort, and not necessarily a comic book artist, but some kind of artist. So they had a business marketing program. So I took the marketing program thinking that when I graduate, I can become a package designer or a logo designer, like design logos for soda companies, or design logos for new businesses and things like that, or design package, because because that's still related to drawing. And I didn't really learn any computer skills there. It was just all traditional drawing techniques. Okay, and when I was in school, I was the student that did all the drawing group projects. Teachers would ask us to go into groups, and I would be the one who would design the logos and join marketing club and all that. So yeah, I started out wanting to be some kind of artist, but I didn't really know what kind of artist I was going to be. But as long as it was related to artwork, that's all that matters. Let me see if there's any questions. Okay, I'm going to keep talking about my origin. As people join and ask questions, I'll try to answer as well. Again, this is a character that someone else designed. It's not an official DC comic or Marvel comic character, even though I thought it was because of the logo. And I'm just going to draw this, and I'm going to finish inking this as I'm done with each video. So each video that I do will be a individual podcast where I work on one commission piece because I have so many commission pieces that I need to get through. So once I graduated, well, let's dial it back a little bit. When I was going to school in San Francisco State, I was working at a bank, at Wells Fargo Bank. And even at Wells Fargo Bank, I was still, I mean, I love drawing. I remember drawing caricatures of my bosses, my coworkers, and they would get upset because they would say, I don't look like that. I don't look, that's my nose isn't that big, or I'm not that short, or I'm not that high, and so forth. And then they would like take the artwork down when I posted it on each of the teller windows. See, there's a little strip there. I think I pretty much have all the details of the costume. So in Wells Fargo, when there was certain holidays, I would draw. Like during Halloween, I would draw like a pumpkin and then post it on the outside of the teller window. So when customers come, they would see it, and customer would tell, "Oh, that's a great drawing." And then that led to some other drawings. I remember a district manager for the bank. They would come and saw. She would see my drawing, and then she started asking me to draw stuff for the whole district, her district, which was whole California. So I was drawing these charts and these charts where they would have tellers and bankers try to reach a sales goal. Like they would have people try to sell checking accounts and business accounts, and I would just draw the whole chart with logos and pictures, and that would be distributed throughout the whole California, which was kind of nice. So I was constantly drawing. Even when I was younger, I was always drawing. I remember the first commission I drew was for one of my aunts. I didn't even know that was a commission at the time. She just asked me to draw her these characters, the 8 immortals, these Chinese characters, 8 immortals, and I drew it and painted it, and then she gave me like $20, actually $10 per figure, and the 8 immortals, it was like 8 figures, so 8 characters to that legend story. So maybe after you watch this podcast and listen to me talk, you can Google up 8 immortals and you'll see who they are. Okay. So $10 figure. So that was my very, very first commission as a kid. And I think I was like in elementary school. Yeah, really, really young. So she supported my drawing, even though I didn't know drawing was anything. She just said, I'm just going to give you $160 if you draw all 8 of these immortals. Right? No, 10. No, that's $80, not 160. Can't do math. It's actually kind of hard for me. Sometimes it's like I can talk and draw, but sometimes if I'm focusing on penciling something, it's a little bit harder. Okay, so this character has straight hair. Let me see if there's any questions. Nope, no questions. This character has straight hair. Originally, I drew it with the wavy hair. I do like the wavy hair because it looks like it's flowing. I don't know if I want to erase it and change it up. Maybe I would just change up and erase some of these. So while working at the bank, Wells Fargo Bank, I started going to comic book stores and buying comics. And in one of the comic stores that I purchased that store in San Francisco on Polk Street, and I think it was Polk and Bush Street, between Pine and Bush in San Francisco, there will be a comic book store that was inside a little, like a hole in the wall, called Oglio's Comics, Ogleo, Oglio's Comics. So I went there and I bought comics, and then one of the workers that was there, his name was Arthur Adams. Arthur Adams is this comic book artist that a lot of people know these days. If you collect art, if you're into comic books, you know who Arthur Adams is. He's one of the artists that draws pretty much every comic book character out there. I mean, in most part, if I think that if it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't be working in comics. Actually, if it was for a few people, I wouldn't be working in comics. Yeah, I kind of like the hair this way. I'm gonna keep it this way. Okay, and then here's the logo. Make sure the logo is correctly. The reference photo, each artist draws it different. So I'm gonna take the reference of a few of them and then combine them and then make it my own. Okay, so the logo here, this one has hooks on the top. This one has no hooks, it just points upwards, and this one has these bumps. I'm gonna make it look like this, and then we'll have them not too long, almost like a superhero logo like this. I don't want it to go beyond that. And then I sketched everything in, and then I'm just gonna darken up where I want lines to be dark so I can see it a little bit better. Make sure everything is in the right flow. So as I met Arthur Adams, I just bought comics for a good couple of years, and we would hang out together. I remember we actually went to Great America together, me and Arthur Adams and some of my friends, and also Arthur Adams' girlfriend at the time. I went to Arthur Adams, and then we just started hanging out, and we went to the store, and then every new comic book Wednesday, Arthur would be there, and he would show his artwork to some of his friends that would go. I remember one of his friends was Mike Mignola. Mike Mignola is a guy who created Hellboy, and at the time, I think he lived in San Francisco, Fisherman's Wharf. I don't know where he lives now. So every Wednesday, I would see both Arthur and Mike Mignola's girlfriend or wife, Christine. They would be there, and they would be showing each other their artwork. And Arthur would come out of his little cave inside the comic book store and bring out some of the art. I remember seeing one of his creations, Monkey Man and O'Brien, before it was even published in comic books. Okay, this was during, I think, 1992, about the time when Image Comics were about to be formed, because Arthur and Mike Mignola and a few other artists like John Byrne, who else? Frank Miller was also there, and a few other guys. Image Comics was started in 1992, and Image, they contacted those few artists and asked if they'd like to join the ranks and make the books there, and they decided not to be part of Image Comics, and just go and become bring their properties to Dark Horse and create this imprint called Legends. See, what's up, Walden? Hope you had the Julius. How long have you had your YouTube channel? I think I had my YouTube channel maybe 4 years. I'm not really sure. I started making YouTube videos for my daughter. Actually, she has a YouTube channel, and she was doing okay with it. And I thought, I learned how to edit videos, helping her out, and I would just make videos and all of that, and I would get all the equipment to help her make videos. And then after a while, I thought, maybe I should make videos on my own and just talk about comics. And then here I am today, making videos. But I don't make videos so much to make a profit from YouTube. I make it because it helps me do work. So I used to teach at the Academy of Art University until the pandemic happened, and I decided not to teach there anymore. When I was teaching at the Academy of Art University, actually, I wanted to stay with one topic at a time. But, since that topic came up, might as well just talk about it. When I was teaching at the Academy of Art University, I would have so many students, and I would teach the kind of the same things over and over again. And I thought, if I'm going to teach the same things over and over again, why don't I just make YouTube videos and explain certain ways to draw or to ink, and how I approach it, so I can give more value to the students. So students would go to class. I would teach them certain topics, and as they learn certain topics, they would go home and they would go home and read videos. So instead of having them read books or read handouts, I would have students just watch some of my videos, and they will learn from there. And then they would come back to class, and if they have questions, they would ask me questions during class. So that's how I started making YouTube videos. Okay, I think the layout for this character looks pretty good. I'm going to move this bag pouch a little bit closer to the front because the body is twisted this way. We have it go this direction. There we go. Yeah, this looks better. I'm going to have this here, here. So rewinding it back to when I was in Oglio's Comics, I didn't really think about becoming a comic book artist because I was like just I think I was going to college and I was just buying comic books. And then once I graduated college, I decided to ask author, how do I get into working in comics? And then during that time, I was actually bringing images of my drawings to author to ask him to look at it, and he will look at it. He's a very very kind person, very nice, very nice person. Yeah. This pouch looks kind of weird. It shouldn't be sticking out like that. I'm gonna have this one go closer to the body. There we go. And then there's that side. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm gonna have this kind of go around. We redraw this. It's very important before you start inking stuff. I actually like making sure everything is in the right place before I start inking. If it's kind of off, and then sometimes I'll draw stuff and ink at the same time. Like I'll draw in ink, but if there's an area that I'm not sure of, I really want to draw all of that looking okay first. I'm gonna move this lower to the thigh a little bit. It was not that close to the hip. Move it right here. Okay, here's a rectangle shape here. And then the belt, I'm going to make that belt a little bit lower here. Okay, move this part here. So you can see my thought process. Sometimes I'm drawing stuff and I think it's okay. And then later on, I'm just going back in there and I'm changing things up a little bit. Okay, here. Okay, I'm going to have this not too big. And this is just my thought process. Sometimes I'm drawing and then I don't like the way it looks, and then I'll go back and I'll change it up a little bit. Okay, I want to see. I still so the struggle is real. This is something that's normal. We have this come around, have this come here, have this. I want to share. I don't want to tangent. Have this come out a little bit. Okay, that looks better. Okay, now for the other side. See, Arthur Adams is a beast. Love his simple style yet render style. Yeah, Arthur. I actually, when I was younger, I was trying to draw like Arthur Adams before I even knew who Arthur Adams was, because the artwork was nice. As a kid, I would actually buy comic books and not pay attention to who the writer or who the penciler or inker or letter or anything like that. That wasn't something that I worried about. I just liked reading the comic book stories, and then I would just mimic some of the images and just redraw some of them. See, the leg is coming out, so I'm gonna have this attached to the leg here. Have this kind of come out a little bit. We'll see the bottom of this, and then we see the flap. Okay, that looks okay. And then here. So in the comic book store, I will show Arthur my penciling pieces, and then and I have to say the penciling pieces wasn't up to par. I would just draw like a high school student or a college student, and then I would just draw regular just characters, just like this. I would just draw a character like this and say, hey, am I good enough to work in comics? And then Arthur didn't say no or anything. It was just like oh, just keep drawing, just keep drawing. He was very nice. And then this was during the time when Todd McFarlane was making his action figures, like these Spawn action figures. I remember going to Toys R Us, buying these toys for a good few years, and then I was so hardcore with buying toys. I actually became friends with some of the Toys R Us workers. Looks like she has a ring over here, so we're gonna put that ring right over here, right that ring, and then put that disc, the cylinder right here. Okay, let's see if there's anything else. Okay, the legs. Let me see how her leg is straight here. Both of them just goes around. So these are the 4 reference photos that I was given. Okay, I'm going to add a little rectangle right here, and then maybe a little bit that sticks out here. The ring. Okay, it looks like I have all these. I don't know what these stripes are. It's not on these ones, so I'm just going to leave those off. Okay, and there's a little V here. Now I'm going to start inking this. Let me see if there's any questions before I continue. Okay. So I'm gonna put this away. I don't really need this anymore. Put this away. Okay, and then I'm going to start inking it. So drawing faces and hands are like really, really important to me. Okay, so I would want to ink those first and draw those first. Okay, I'm going to bring this in closer so everyone can see it. Okay, so yeah, my mind, like I'm going to be telling stories in this podcast and also talk about like what I'm doing in drawing and stuff. So during that time when I met the comedy, actually when I was in Toys R Us, there was this guy that who worked at Toys R Us, and he was also wanting to be a comic book artist. And he said, You know, why don't you be?" I told him that I want to be a comic book artist, and I don't know what to do. Like it seems like something that's really hard for me to get into. And then he said to me, "Why don't you get into inking?" I'm like, "Inking? What's that?" I didn't know what inking was. I thought like in comic books, people just drew everything. I didn't know there was a thing called inking. He goes, "Yeah, there's inking where you would get pencils and then you would ink on top of that. Why don't you do some sample pages?" And I thought, sample pages? What are sample pages? I didn't even know what that is. And he said, "I can give you some photocopies of some samples and you can try there." And I thought, samples? Sure. I said, sure, but I still didn't have a clue like what he's talking about. Because this when I was like during my teens, and then I didn't really know what all of that was. But if someone said to me, "I'm gonna give you some photocopies and then you can try practicing over that," I'm just gonna get it first and then try to figure it out later. So later on, I went to the the toy store, Toys R Us, when it was in San Francisco, and then he was nice enough and he gave me some photocopies. They're literally just photocopies of someone else's pencils, and I didn't really understand what that was. And he goes, "Yeah, all you got to do is buy vellum." Or what's vellum? Because that's tracing paper. Just buy tracing paper, place it on top of these photocopies of the pencils, and then ink it. Okay, once you ink it, that is your sample. Like that's interesting. This is easy. All I'm doing is just tracing the work. So I got home and I started inking some of the samples. I taped. I had this drawing board, which is just like a regular flat board. It wasn't even a drawing board from a art store. It was just a board that my father had laying around because he did like some woodwork every so often. And then I just took that and I taped the photocopy on that wood board, and then I would put the vellum and just tape it on top, and I would start inking it. And the only thing I had with inking are these repeatographs. These aren't the same repeatographs over time. I actually bought like a lot of different ones, and I kept going. Some break, and I will throw some away. But the same brand, those repeatograph pins were art pins that I bought for college, and then it was the first kind of pin that I knew to use how to ink, and I was inking that completely with a repeatograph. Luckily that I was in college and I had group classes, and I remember some of my group said, "Hey, Walden, let's go to the stationery store in San Francisco." I forgot the name of the stationery store. Let's buy these ink pens so we can use them to ink our school projects. So I bought them. So I thought when it came to inking, and these pens, because the back of these you would fill them. It's like a cartridge that you fill with ink. And I thought, okay, inking, that makes sense. Here's the inks. I would just use the same kind of ink, and I just ink on top of that on vellum. And I remember inking on vellum. Vellum was like so bad. Vellum is tracing paper. I don't know if you guys ever tried using tracing paper. Tracing paper is a really thin paper. It's almost like, let me see what's the best way I can explain this. Now, okay, I'm going to be blunt and say it like how I see it. If you ever went to a public bathroom and you need to use the restroom, to sit down and do your business, that thin paper is basically almost the same as tracing paper, as vellum. It's thin. Hey, Daniel Lira, how's it going? Hi, I'm new to the channel. Just wanted to say hi and that you inspired me to try line art since I always paint it without it digitally. Oh, good. Thank you for joining my channel, Daniel. You actually joined and you're watching this podcast. You kind of came in at the right time. I'm doing this podcast, and I'm calling it Podcast Draw with Me, where I'm talking about how I became a professional artist. And this is the first in a series of as many that I'm going to go. I'm not just going to talk about how I became an artist, like how I started working on this for this company and that company, how one job led to another. So hopefully, if you're watching this channel and watching these podcasts, that you'll learn some of the techniques and what I've done to get there, so you don't make the same mistakes, or you'll learn some of the ways I became a comic book artist, and it'll help you along the way. Okay, thank you for joining here. What was I talking about earlier? Yeah, so vellum, it's like a really thin paper, almost like that those toilet paper that you use to cover up the seats, that thin, where you can see through it. And I remember inking on top of those, and the paper would just crinkle up like a tissue paper. Imagine tissue paper that's wet. It just all crinkles up. It was really hard for me to see through that paper. Hey, Camila, how's it going? Thank you for joining me on my very first podcast. I'm calling this podcast number one. I'm thinking of doing a whole series of podcasts, number 1, 2, 3, and so forth, where I'm just talking about how I became artist, my journey and everything, hoping that maybe in the future that all of you guys will be able to learn from my mistakes, or to not make some of the mistakes I made in becoming a professional comic book artist. So those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Walden Wong, and I'm a comic book artist for Marvel and DC Comics. I've also done work for Dark Horse Comics, Image Comics, Disney Adventures, many publishers. I worked with Todd McFarlane Productions on his character Spawn. I also worked with Mark Silvestri on his character, some of his Cyberforce characters. I've also worked with Wildstorm. Wildstorm was a company that was owned by Jim Lee, who's actually the publisher of DC Comics these days. I worked for pretty much all publishers. I also worked on different properties, movie properties such as Xena Warrior Princess, Predator, and characters like that. And I've been working in comics for but we're not just working comics, but also working professionally as a artist for over 26 years now. 26 years, maybe more. I don't remember exactly what day. I have a photocopy of my first paycheck ever. And then we'll talk about that in future episodes. But I'm going to dial it back to what I was talking about earlier, how I became a professional artist and the journey that I went to go there. So I was doing these samples, inking on these vellum, and the vellum would crinkle up all the time, where it kind of like bulges up. So what I've done was I would have like this. I would hold an actual stick to push that paper down. Imagine your vellum is like this very thin tracing paper, and every time you ink on that flat paper, I'm going to use a towel for example. Every time you ink on that paper will buckle and raise up a little bit, leading you to not be able to see through the paper. So what I've done was, when I'm inking on the vellum, I would get another stick and I would push that paper down so I can see it. Because every time I ink area, that would just raise up, and I would have to press it down in order to see. Otherwise, you really can't see what's underneath that vellum paper because it's raised so much. So while I was working at the bank, I'll tell you which bank I was working on. I was working at the bank at Wells Fargo Bank, and the bank I was being a teller, like a bank teller at Wells Fargo Bank. And I've also done some stuff as a personal banker, where I help people open up new accounts, help people do like problems with accounts and they need fixing, and I would just help them fix stuff like that. So I was doing that for maybe a good 4 years. So all through college, when I was going to San Francisco State, I started that job right after high school, and I was working at the bank for good all the years when I was going to college, doing that part time and also full time for a little bit. And I said to myself, I'm gonna make myself see if I can get work as a comic book artist. I've already met Arthur, and he gave me like some pointers. I met this guy at Toys R Us, and then he gave me photocopies of samples, and then I'm going to see what I can do. So along the way, Image Comics was very popular. Image Comics was very popular. There was studios called Extreme Studios. I think I also worked for Extreme Studios before. Yeah, Extreme Studios. They had a tour. They published these books, and I remember there was a thing that if a comic book store orders so many of this book or that book, they would tour like wherever the comic book store. Like if this comic book store ordered like 200 copies of this, they would go to the store with some of the artists. Rob Liefeld was there, and Stephen Platt was there, and uh, Jessica Campbell, and a lot of other artists, like very, very big names artists now, but back then they were like new artists. They just got hired. Let me add some here. So there, I met some of the artists, and then I also brought my portfolio of the stuff that I've inked, and then I showed it around. The photocopies of samples that the guy at Toys R Us that he gave me, and then I met this artist. His name was Marlo Aquiza. Marlo Aquiza, he was inker for Extreme Studios, working with Rob Liefeld, and he was kind enough to give me his business card. No, actually, pretty much everyone that was there gave me his business card. Stephen Platt gave me a business card. Some of the inkers and some of the other letterers, they also gave me the business card. But for some reason, I gravitated towards Marlo because he was like so nice to me. He said, "Give me a call. Give me a call. I can send you more samples that you can practice over." So I thought, okay, great. I'm gonna practice. I'm gonna call him to see what I can do. He gave me his business card from Extreme Studios, and it was like one of the coolest things that I've ever seen. A business card that had like this character Shaft that Rob Liefeld created, and it was just I would just call him. So I would call him like every like month or so just to see if like he can critique my work, and he was very, very kind to critique my work. We didn't have internet at the time. We had snail mail. Snail mail is when we mail stuff, photocopies. So I was sending him my original inks, and then later on he said, "You know what? Don't send me the originals. Just make a photocopy of that. So in case it gets lost, you'll still have the original." So I would make photocopies of my work. I would go to this place called Kinko's. Kinko's is now like FedEx store. A lot of the FedEx stores that you see these days, it used to be called Kinko's. Kinko's is just like this place that you can go there and make photocopies of your work because they have these like big photocopy machines. Ink in this line. So I don't know if all of you guys know what Kinko's is. It's just like photocopy store. Okay, I'm gonna ink in this. So I would send Marlo would send me samples, like photocopies of some of the stuff that he's done. I remember inking some Stephen Platt stuff over what was that character? Prophet, when they were working together. And I was like inking samples of Newman, one of Rob Liefeld's characters. Anything that Marlo had, he would just send me photocopies of. And then he would also send me photocopies of his inks so I can study them. And then I would ink my stuff looking at his stuff. And he was very helpful, very, very kind. Once I would be done inking my work, I would send it over to Marlo Alcuza, and then he would critique my work, and then we would just talk on the phone, and he would say, "Oh, over here is good. You need to work on this area. This area looks kind of a little bit off. I'm going to ink some of this area and show you how I fix it." So, for example, if this was my inks, Marlo would actually put a post-it note on top and then re-ink on top of it, and he would send me that artwork. Send me the same photocopy with the same markups that I've done, and I would learn that way. And we would be doing that back and forth over and over again for maybe 5 months, 6 months. I remember working at the bank, and I was so dedicated. Imagine working at the bank full time, and then I would bring this big drawing board, and then the artwork and ink stuff would be attached to it. And during my lunch breaks or my 15-minute break, I would go to the lunchroom and I would just draw. Everyone's all chit-chatting or hanging out. I would just go there and I would ink. I would just ink. Okay. I was very dedicated because I wanted it that bad. And I figured if I don't get work within a year, I'm going to abandon trying to be like a professional artist, and I'm going to see if I can become a bank manager and then move up to a district manager and so forth. Okay. So practicing doing a lot of inking samples. I've done so many inking samples that if you look at some of my older videos, you can see some of my older inking samples. They're really really bad. I mean, like super bad. I didn't really know what I was doing. It wasn't until later on I spoke to Marlo, and he goes, "Marlo, you really need to ink with a nib. Practice the nib instead of using a repeatograph. This nib is flexible, and then you can draw thick to thin lines, and you really, really need to master the nib." When he said that, I was thinking, what do you mean master the nib? I don't really know what does that mean, master the nib? Like what does that mean? So I just started practicing with a nib, and this nib was so hard because if you press down too hard on this nib, the nib would crack and it would break, and you would just have to spend like another dollar and buy another one. So the nib, after a while, I did learn it, and then I got the hang of using it. The first time I've ever used a nib was when I was in high school. I took all my life, I only took 2 drawing classes, which was in high school, and also 2 painting classes. Everything I know in art these days is self-taught. It's self-taught because I really, really enjoy art. I love art. I like creating art. I love drawing it. I like inking it. I like painting it. I like using Photoshop and drawing on that. Just art in general, I really like. I can go to a museum and then just be there for hours on end and just enjoy being like trying to dissect and figure out like how a certain artist will draw things a certain way. Okay, so I've inked in all those. Now I'm gonna start inking in some of the boot straps and stuff over here. So this is my template. I'm just gonna find the right arc and then add a double line to it. So this one looks like a nice arc here. I'm gonna ink in this. So I sent samples back and forth, and they were bad, but Marlo was really nice. And then during this time, I didn't really show anyone samples. I was just showing it to author. I would get some samples that Marlo sent me, and I would ink that sample, and I would just send it to Marlo. And then as I went to the comic book store, I would show it to author Adams. And then author goes, "You know what? I have some samples. You can practice again my stuff." Like some of the stuff that I've drawn for Marvel Comics and some of the stuff I've done for Toy Biz. So some of the stuff I've done for Gen 13 and Generation X over at Marvel. I always got in trouble for trying to master the nib. Yeah, you break it. If you're in school, there's a good chance that you might break the nib. But if you practice and then you get good at it, it'll look pretty good. I'm gonna make sure this is in the right angle. Kind of looks kind of off to me. I'm gonna move this further out. This has to look right. The logo is very important. I'm gonna redraw this. Yeah, this looks kind of off to me. I'm gonna erase the whole logo. So as you can see, as I'm drawing stuff, sometimes I just don't like the angle of it, and I need to redraw it. So here's the front of her chest. Here's this side. I'm gonna mark a box in there just to make sure everything's in the right place. Okay, and then I'm gonna put this one right here and this one right here. Okay, I'm gonna add this. So what I'm doing is I'm just adding a guideline so I can follow that guide. And then this one goes here. Goes to the corner. And then we have the center. Okay, that looks a little bit better. Okay, I'm gonna have this one come out a little bit more. The size is kind of off. I'm gonna have this stretch all the way out to the side over here. So as I was doing the samples, I was showing Author Adams some of my stuff, and then he said, "Well, I have some photocopies of my work. Why don't you practice inking that?" So I had like Incredible Hulk pieces, Gen 13, Generation X covers that he worked on, and I was inking over that, and that was such a blast. Like Author giving me some of the stuff that he worked on, and I was inking that. So I practiced really hard, and some of the stuff that he was saying, letting me practice over, the books were published already. So I would actually look at the other inkers or the way he inked himself, and I would just try to mimic that same style of inking. Okay, I'm gonna give this a little hook too, because one of the characters over there has a hook because I think it just looks much cooler. We have this oval. Okay. Now, let me see if there's any questions that I can answer. Okay, so far so good. Okay, I hope you guys are enjoying this podcast where I'm talking about my career as a professional artist. Feel free to ask any questions because this is live and I'm able to, probably the first kind of podcast that you can actually ask questions and I can answer. For those of you who are in the channel right now, please hit that like button. If you hit that like button, it will help this channel algorithm. Please like, share, subscribe if you can. Thank you very much for that. And I'm going to continue talking about my career and how I got work as a professional artist. This is podcast number 1, and then we're going to do more as I go because I feel like I have so many commissions to do that when I'm doing these podcasts, that it makes me do the work on time a little bit better. I find that it helps me. And also it forces me to finish these commissions a little bit quicker because if I don't do these podcasts sometimes or these live videos, sometimes the commission will just be waiting on me to finish. Now, when I ink areas of logos, like most of the stuff I do for Marvel and DC Comics, anytime there's a logo, I'm always using stencils to make it as perfect as I can. Okay, so let's fast forward. Let's go back to my story. So Arthur would give me stuff, and then I would ink some of his pieces, and then when I would be done, I would bring it back to the store during New Comic Book Day, and I would give it to him, and he would look over it. And as I'm done looking over it, he would give me new photocopies of pencils, and then I would ink that. And then when I didn't go to the comic book store, because later on as I got older, I didn't really go to New Comic Book Day every week. I started going to comic book conventions where he would attend, and then I would just go to his booth and then sit next to him, and then he would talk. He would critique. He's such a nice person. Arthur Adams is such a busy person, yet he has time. He gives me the time, and then he spends the time to critique my work at a comic book convention. At a comic book convention, as busy as he is, he still had the time for me to do that for me. Okay, this is tape that I tapered because my thing is falling apart. My stencil broke already. I have new ones, but I just like using this one. Anyway, I'm just gonna ink in all this area first. Knowing now how busy a comic book artist can be at a comic book convention, I really admire what Arthur did for me because I remember he would be drawing his commissions, and then he would be critiquing my work while he's drawing his commissions. And then sometimes when he draws his backgrounds, he goes, "It's okay, Walden. I don't mind talking to you." Because when I'm drawing these backgrounds, it's automatic. It's just a lot of cross-hatching. It's the figure work that takes a little bit longer. Okay, so what area else? I drew that area. Okay, we have this piece of shape right over here. Okay, let me see if there's any questions. Looking good, Walden. Thanks, American Discord. Thank you for following me here. Discord. Yeah, that's Discord. Something that I need to get into too. Okay, so I would go to comic book conventions, and Arthur Adams would give me more photocopies of his work. He always had photocopies. And after I got to know Arthur Adams, even working with him later on, I'm fast forwarding to a few years, many years later. I know that when he makes photocopies of his work, he likes to make like 6 or 7 photocopies. Like he likes making a lot of photocopies and then I do understand why. So he can have like his work in case one is damaged or if he needs to share it. It's this first generation work. Instead of a photocopy of a photocopy, so forth. This detail here, I'm just going to use a French curve. This is a French curve because it gives me a straight line. And ink in this line here. Okay. With microns, I want to go a little bit slower. The faster you go, sometimes that line skips. Anyway, after showing Arthur some of my work, I really still didn't send like my work to publishers or anything like that. I wasn't really seeking work. I was just trying to figure out what I need to do to get a good portfolio going on. Later on, there used to be this magazine called Wizard Magazine. Those of you who've been collecting comic books for a long time knows that there's this magazine called Wizard Magazine, and this is before the internet days. Wizard Magazine is this magazine where you can buy it, and then it will talk about some of the upcoming comic books that kind of like a preview of a comic book. if you will. They would do reviews. They would talk about what artist is working on this, and also like what hot and coming artists or what new companies are going to be working on what project. Kind of like comic book news these days that you can get all that information readily available on the internet. But back then, before the internet, it was the Wizard magazine. Wizard magazine is almost like what can I? It's like a magazine about new stuff, new comic books that comes out. Okay, I'm inking the detail of her outfit right here and here, and then here I'm going to use this arc right here. Now I'm going to make sure everything is dry. I'm going to go from here to here. Okay. So when I ink my own work, there's more freedom to it as opposed to when I'm inking a penciler's work where I want everything to be very, very precise. Okay. The collar, I'm going to grab my stencil, make sure I find a nice curve. This one looks pretty good. I'm going to find out where the center is. Okay. So I started buying Wizard magazine. Not only did I buy the Wizard magazine, I started as a subscription where I would get a subscription every month. In the magazine, I remember towards the back of the magazine, they would have addresses of all the publishers that they can gather. It would have the phone numbers, it would have the addresses, and it would have the company's name and so forth. Okay, we have this come here, and I remember saving all these phone numbers and then write it onto this little Rolodex. And I remember calling every of the literally cold calling. I would literally cold call all these publishers and to ask them, do you have photocopies of pencil samples that I can practice inking on? I would like to do some inking over some of your characters. And some of them will send me stuff and then some of them won't, but that's okay. I really had, I'm really a people person. I can talk to total strangers and have a really good conversation. I'm not one to shy away from talking to people, even though as most artists these days, they're introverts. I was an introvert. I think because I started working at the bank and I had to talk to customers, that made me more able to talk to people than how it used to be when I wasn't before. Okay, if that makes any sense. Okay, now I'm going to go and start using my brush. This is the brush I'm going to be using. I'm going to be inking all the outlines, so this character will appear more in detail. And the ink I'm using is this Speedball ink right here. Okay, Speedball ink, super black. I usually don't dip it on top of the artwork. I'm just doing it on the camera so you guys can see. So inking a few samples, I got a hold of, I got a hold of Wildstorm, and I also got a hold of Antarctic Press, these independent publishers, and London Night Studios, Entity Comics, and so forth. And then I asked for inking samples, and they would send me photocopies of their work that they've done, photocopies of pencil samples, and they would have me ink that. So I started inking a whole bunch of those, and different characters for different publishers, independent publishers, and so forth. And then I even started contacting Marvel Comics, and then got a hold of the art director there, and called him, and then they answered the phone, and I'm the art director. What can I help you with? Oh, I'm an aspiring inker. I was wondering if you have any inking samples that I can practice over. And he was nice enough. His name was Darren Ock. I still keep in touch with him today. Well, through Facebook. We still talk to each other on Facebook. And he still has one of my letters that I sent him. Like he remembers me from many, many years ago that I was this guy that would call him. And then I'll also talk about how like a lot of artists, editors, and publishers remember me. That's for a later video, so stay tuned for some of those. And then I would just talk to a lot of people that I've never met on the phone because we didn't have email. And then I would just ask him if you have any photocopies of pencil samples that I can practice over. After a good few months, I gathered a lot of samples and I just started inking that. I had a whole good amount of stuff to work with. I would ink stuff from Wildstorm, practice over that. I would ink stuff from DC Comics, Marvel Comics, and then I got a little bit more confident about my inking, and then I decided to go to comic book conventions. I think I went to WonderCon and San Diego Comic Con. Those were the only two conventions that I knew of, and WonderCon was located in San Francisco at the time, so it really wasn't much of a travel for me because I live in San Francisco. And then San Diego Comic Con was, oh yeah, there was also Alternative Press Expo, ApeCon. That was also run by Comic Con. That was also held in San Francisco, which was a Alternative Press Expo. So I actually went to 6 conventions within that 1 year. 2 San Diego Comic Cons, 2 WonderCons, actually probably more than a year, 2 Comic Cons, and 2 Alternative Press Expo. And the first time I went, I just asked people to critique my work and to see if they had any photocopies of samples. I remember one of the artists that I met, his name was Dave Stevens. I even asked him if he had any photocopies of his work that he can let me buy or use. And then he showed me some of the stuff he was penciling and inking his own work at the same time. So sometimes he'll be drawing a figure, but he won't draw it completely. It's only half drawn, and he would ink certain parts of it. And then later on, he would go back and finish pieces of it. I've met Eric Larson. I met Chris Sprouse, asking to look at pencil samples and for them to critique my work. And a lot of people were nice. I met so many people. And then every comic book artist that I met always had the time to talk to me and be nice and, help me out or give me photocopies or give me advice. That's why one of the reasons when I go to comic book conventions, I try to be as nice as I can to everyone that I meet, because everyone that I met along the way, they were very nice to me. So the first year, I gathered a lot of pencil samples, and then when I got home, I just had a lot of stuff to do, and that itself was already fun. It was really, really fun for me to just do ink samples. It was my way of unwinding. When I'm done doing comic book, and when I'm done doing banking stuff for the bank, I would go in there and do my inking stuff. Even though I did not know if I'm inking it correctly, at that time I was talking to author, I was talking to Marlo Quiza. I went to some comic book conventions, and then they would tell me, "Oh, this looks kind of weird. You have to ink certain things this way. You have to do certain things that way," and then I would ink accordingly. And I remember talking to some editors at Marvel. I remember talking to Dan Raspler at the time. He was the editor at Marvel, working on some of the Justice League of America books. I kept in touch with him ever since the first convention I met him in San Diego Comic Con, and he also went to WonderCon. So he kind of remember my name, but he gave me his business card. He said, "Hey, keep in touch, Walden," like that. And then he had a loud voice, and then again, no internet. I would just call him and just talk to him over the phone, and I would recognize his voice. And we just started talking. He would just send me more samples. And I would practice. I would just practice on some of the pencil samples that he sent me. So I would get a lot of samples, practice some more, and then when I met some of the same editors in the comic convention, like Herb Millette was one of the characters for Antarctic Press. Dan Rasper was another editor for Dan Rasper for DC Comics. Joey Cavalieri was another editor that I met, and I spoke to him a lot, asking for inking samples. And I'm just gonna start naming names because it's just fun to let everyone know where I came from. Some of these editors and publishers, they're not working in comics books anymore, but they were very nice to me, and I still remember how I got work. So I'm just gonna say thank you. If you hear your name here, and when I mention your name, it's because I'm thanking you. Unless there was something wrong, if you did something wrong, then I'll mention it. But most of the people whose name I mentioned is because I want to thank them in this podcast. Okay, so I met some of them, and then after a while of seeing Dan Rasper, he will also send me samples. I would send him my inking samples, and then as I'm done, he would say, "Well, I'm going to send you some more," and he would snail mail it to me. Snail mail. You see, snail mail means he's just taking the photocopies, putting it in a packet, and he's mailing it through the post office. And then once I got those samples, I would totally just ink it up. And then once I'm done inking it up, and I would just send it back to Dan Rasper right away. Same with the art director of Marvel, Darren Ock. He would send me samples. After he sent me samples, I would think, okay, these are the samples that Marvel wants me to ink. I'm going to ink it up as fast as I can, not mess around, and then send it to them, and then hopefully they'll give me another critique. All this time, I wasn't really thinking about getting work. I just wanted to get a good portfolio going. Okay. I never said, is there any work available? I said, do you have time to critique my work? Let me know. I even started making sample packets where I'm asking sample packets means there's a packet of stuff of my photocopies. I would bring it to conventions, like a 8.5 by 11 manila envelope that would hold photocopies of the pencils and photocopies of the inks. And I would go to conventions and include that in there. And each of my photocopy that I inked, I would put my name and my address. I would usually, in the past, I would write in my name and address on each of the photocopy. I learned that a lot of times if an editor would get your samples, that may not, the main editor that you give it to may not be looking at it. However, sometimes those pieces of your artwork that you're sending to them or giving to them, it may be separated from the original packet that has your name on it, and it would be pieced out to another editor, or they would refer to another editor. So that's why I was writing by hand, my name and address on each of the photocopies of the inks that I worked on. Okay. I later on got smarter. So instead of writing my name and address on each of the photocopies, I went to a office supply store and I ordered a rubber stamp that had my name, my address, and my phone number on it. And then I started stamping each of the photocopies. That way, I don't have to spend time writing my name, address, and phone number onto each photocopy. This is before the internet age. Before the internet, we all our communications that we had was by phone number, by mail, and everything's just like old school style. Okay, so I did that for a good few more months, a lot of months. So that's her hair. I'm liking the way it looks so far. Could add some loops to her hair. So as I started doing more samples, I had one. It was towards the last convention at WonderCon. I said, "Okay, Walden, this is it. We're going on a year now. Looks like you're not really getting anywhere." I was actually getting some kind of work for independent publishers, but I'm gonna tell you guys right now, the stuff I've done for independent publishers did not pay well. Okay, Antarctic Press, the publishers of Ninja High School, Shaken Mary, Warrior Nun, Ariella. These titles that I'm mentioning are titles that I worked on. Warrior Nun, Ariella, Ninja High School, Shaken Mary Shooting Gallery. They paid me $8 a page. It's very, very little. If you think about it, $8 a page, and you're spending $10 on it, you're only making like what is it? What's the math? Like 70 cents an hour. But I didn't care at the time because I know that Antarctic Press will be publishing my work, and that's what I wanted. Even if they didn't pay me, in my mind, it was okay because it will be work that's printed and published, and it will be sold all over America. And with that, I would have a name, like a project under my belt that I've worked on. So when Shock and Mary, the first comic book that I've ever worked on, was printed, they sent me like a good, I forget how many copies, maybe 20 copies of the same book. And then I started going to conventions, or I would send out submission packets. And in that packet, I would also include like one of the books. Okay, I only had like 20 to use, so I gave them to certain people based on what I thought had more chances of me getting work. Okay, so when I started doing that at conventions, I would show like same Dan Raspler again, and then Darren Ock, and then some other publishers like Joey Cavalieri, Jason Liebig, who was the editor at Marvel at the time, Mark Powers, who was also one of the X-Men editors. I also showed myself to Joe Quesada, who was actually working at Marvel, actually Event Comics before he started working on Marvel Knights. Showed myself to Jimmy Palmiotti, and then I would give them an actual book. And then when they would look at my samples. Sometimes some of the others, not I'm not naming names, when I would show them my stuff, they would not. Some of them, some people would just like look at you. Oh, this is just another aspiring artist. But the moment I gave them a published book, their eyes like started taking me more seriously. Okay, they just started saying, okay, this is actually someone who's been published, so I'm gonna look at his work a little bit more in details because maybe this guy is okay with what he does. Okay, let me see if there's any questions. Looking good. Well then, Danny. Hey, Danny. It's good to see you here. Smash the like button, folks. YouTube didn't notify me until the 45 minutes mark. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I should start maybe making this like a normal time when I'm doing this. Daniel Lero said, "Do you still agree with that decision of working practically for free today? Like now, because I've been a published artist. I don't want to work for free anymore." Unless you're working with a friend and the friend needs help and then you want to like help your friend out or hook up with your friend and then like do projects together, then it's okay. But back then when I was younger, I didn't mind working for free because that was how I would get my work published. But today it's different. The reason it's different today is because I have so many projects that I'm working on that if I did a free project here, then it's taking time away from me to work on a paid project. So I have to really work on paid projects over working for free these days. Because again, if you work for free, you're sacrificing your pay project, and there's a chance that your pay projects will fall behind, and you really don't want your pay projects to fall behind. But back then, as someone who's new, who's never been published, who's never been any kind of published artist at all, I just wanted something to be published. Okay. I also did a lot of books for free that never paid me. For example, ATT Comics, they never paid me for any of the artwork. Not only that, they also kept all the original art. Also, Anarchy Press, they also kept all the original art that I've never actually got back. Marvel and DC Comics was the first publishers that actually sent us original artwork back. But all these other publishers, I don't know what they did with it. They probably kept it or threw it away or sold it, or I'm not sure what happened to it. But that's okay. That was from a long time ago. We learn and we grow from it. So yeah, back then I would just do work for free. Like I remember meeting what was that company called? Another local publisher. I found them in sometimes you go to a comic book store and there'll be these little ads about oh, we're looking for comic book artists. Well, back then it was like that. I don't know about now, but back then you go to a comic book store and they have these little ads about local comic book shows or little ads, photocopies of paper saying that they're looking for a comic book artist. And then I contacted them. I forgot the name of it. Anyway, I know the name of the people who were running that. His name was John Flowers and Nina Flowers. I don't know if they're still in comic books now. They actually had a comic book convention that they had, and then they had meetings once a month with some of the artists and writers, and that felt kind of nice, even though some of the work I've done never got paid. But again, it was it was an understanding that if you work for this company, you wouldn't get paid, you get exposure, and to me that was okay. But it felt kind of nice, like I felt like I was a real comic book artist, working and doing work, and then having these meetings. It was something that I've never experienced as a guy who just never done comics before. So I went to the conventions and I felt like a superstar at the time. I remember they needed they were running a convention and printing their books. They've only printed one book. I forgot the name of the book, but they had like maybe two conventions. It was like they did conventions and then on the side, and then they would print their own book. And then that book actually got printed and it was sold at a comic book store. I remember seeing it. I was so proud. Okay, and then I was so excited for them that I even started cold calling some of the comic book artists, asking them if they want to appear at the convention. I remember IHOC International. IHOC is Savage Dragons, Eric Larson's colors at the time. IHOC, IHOC, stands for International House of Colors. It was a group of people that colored for the Savage Dragon, and they made a name for themselves. And I got them to go to one of the conventions, so that was pretty exciting. I met them all. I still have some of the comics that they signed for me, so that was very nice to be. Like I felt like wow, I made it. I'm a comic book artist, and I'm doing these bookings for these comic book artists to go to a convention. No money was involved. Conventions were like local artists that was able to just go there. We just give them booths or something. So I met a lot of artists, and then I also worked for an art Entity Comics. Entity Comics, they printed a Nero X. I think I mentioned that in the previous video. So if you're watch some of my videos, you'll hear some of these same titles. It was Stargate that I worked on, Stargate SG. There was also a book called Nero X, like I mentioned. There was also a book called Snowman, Matt Martin's Snowman. The publisher's name was Don Chin, the guy who runs in Entity Comics. Before Entity Comics, it used to be called Parody Press. I met them at a comic book convention, and then they looked at my sample and they said, "Oh, your stuff is good." And then later on, I called them and they said, "We have this Nero X project. It doesn't pay, but we'll see if after the book is published, if we can pay you." So the book was published, and they're very generous. They sent me. I remember Nero X. They sent me 200 copies. 200 copies. That's pretty much like a whole case of comics that they sent me. I had so many of them that I didn't know what to do. So I remember going to a comic book convention. I was just giving them away. I had a booth. One of the local comic book conventions had a booth, and I was just giving the comic books away. And then I remember people seeing, "Oh, how much is this?" They go, "No, it's free. You can keep it." "Wow, you're giving out free comic books." I said, "Yeah. I don't know what to do with it. I have so many of them. I don't know what I'm going to do with all these comic books." So I gave them away, and then later on, when some more books were getting printed, and I wasn't getting paid, even though he said I might be getting paid depending on how much printing costs and all that, and he wasn't able to pay me. Don Chin wasn't able to pay me, and which was okay. Again, he tried to make everyone happy. I remember he offered me some original artwork. He said, "I have some Ernie Chan Conan. How about I give you some of that artwork in lieu of payment?" And then I was like, I don't know who Ernie Chan is. I don't know what Conan. I never read Conan. Why would I want that? I'm kicking myself in the butt now because now Ernie Chan's artwork, especially on Conan, is worth a lot of money. But I didn't know at the time, as a kid who didn't read Conan and as a kid who didn't really follow comic book artists. I didn't know any of that. So all of that was new to me. Okay, we'll go here and make some of this detail. And so again, because of that, doing some of the free work, I got to get a lot of comic books that I worked on for free. And then I started meeting more independent publishers and showing them my work and giving them a free copy along the way. So a lot of them would get a copy. And it took me seriously. And then I started going to different conventions, and different conventions started telling me to do samples of the work. And then I would do like stuff that was work, but it was like paid very little, like $8 or no paid. It wasn't until the last convention I go to, and I said to myself, actually, let me answer some questions first. Let's see, Music House. Hey, Music House. Oh, how's it going? Hey, Paul. Hey, Walden. Which inky tool do you use the most? I use this tool over here the most. This brush pen. I also use the Crow Quill over here, and then I also use Microns over here. And then I also use repeatographs. All three of these tools, when I'm inking pages, I use all three of them at the same time. I don't use just one tool. I rotate tools all the time. Not only do I rotate tools like this one, I rotate different sizes. The repeatograph Collinor, these microns, I rotate sizes. This brand is my favorite, the Statler. I like the Statler brand. So I don't buy them over and over again. I just buy one, and then when the tips fall apart, then I'll throw them away. Actually, I don't throw them away. I refill them. If you look at one of my older videos, you'll see me. Yeah, when the tips falls apart, then I'll throw them away. But if the tips are still good, I'll just open up the tips, drop some ink in there, and I'll refill it, and then I'll reuse them over and over again. This set here, it lasted me for a good 3 years, and it's still ticking. So it lasts for a long time. Yeah. These nibs I'm using over here, they're Hunt's 102. And then I have these regular $1 holders. These cushions, you just buy these at a local stationery store. They're just for pencil cushion. I have a few of these that I use at the same time. The reason I have a few of these nibs, they're all the same size. They're all Hunt's 102, but when you're using a newer nib, they're sharper, and I color code them. Okay, the older nibs, they're duller, and then it gives you a thicker line. The medium lids and so forth, it will give you a middle line. So I color code them so I know which one is the thin, medium, and the thicker line. Again, the more you use nib, the more it's going to be flexible, and the more it's going to be giving you like a thicker line. So I save them and I use them accordingly. Okay, and then the brush, I just use this brush. This brush, I would just use I just ink with the thin line. And then if I need a thicker line, I just ink in 2 lines, and then I'll just thicken that up. Okay, I'm gonna look at the reference photo of this character. I think this character had some black areas on it. So this is the outline. Haven't done any of the detail yet. Let me see if there's any other questions to answer. Danny, when you were working at the bank, did you save for like 6 months of rent when you decided to go into comics full time? Okay, that's a very good question. When I was working at the bank right after college, I was still living with mom and dad. So I didn't need to worry about rent or anything like that because I was living with mom and dad in their house. Okay, it looks like he has a black outfit over there. So this was when I was really young as a kid. So I had I didn't really have to worry about rent that much. I did pay for all my own travels and actually, I take that back. I did pay a little bit of rent. I think I paid like $500 a month because I was working the bank just to contribute to the family. But let's see. Let me fill in some of the black areas of this costume. But not. I wasn't paying like thousands of dollars a month, so that helped along the way. Gonna start separating some of the black areas for this black outfit right over here, the top part of the outfit. Let me see if I answer all the questions. Okay, let's go back to what I was talking about. I think I was talking about. Oh yeah, yeah. So I was sending samples out with some of the free comic books I got, and they weren't paying that much, but it was okay. Okay, come fast forward to my last year, my last month. I was coming on to almost a year of trying to get work, and I decided, I'm going to ink these samples. I got some samples from Extreme Studios, Marlo Acusa. I got some samples from Top Cow, and I got some samples from like all these different places. I'm going to work really, really hard on these samples to see if I can get work from it. And then I'm going to spend maybe a month to ink one sample page because I want every line to be really, really good. And I remember every sample page that I had, the books, I was going to a comic book store to buy that actual published book so I can study the published inks, and then I would try to make my inks better than the published inker. I remember doing that, like really, really studying each and every line. Especially one of the comic books I was studying over was The Darkness over Mark Silvestri. I think Matt Banning who did the inking on that. I remember buying that comic book. It was a cover, and then I inked that, and I was looking at every detail, every line as close as I can. I was really, really, really detailed and making sure every line that I drew was as close as I can. It took me like a good 4 weeks to do that one sample, But I said to myself, I'm gonna go to a comic book convention, and if anyone asks me how long it took me to ink this piece, I'm just gonna tell them that I inked it in 2 days. Even though that's not true. It took me maybe 3 weeks, 4 weeks to ink one page. But if anyone asks me, I'm just gonna say 2 days, because honestly, how is anyone gonna know that it took you 2 days or 2 weeks? So I was at a convention, and I remember Mark Silvestri asking me how long did it take you to make this page, because it was the piece that he penciled, and I just said 2 days. Wow, that's pretty impressive for 2 days. Talked to Jim Lee. Jim Lee said the same thing. How long did it take you? Almost Marvel editors and almost everyone asked me, like, how long did it take you to ink this page? And then I said just 2 days. But I figure that if the work actually did come, and I had to ink it in 2 days, I'm going to work hard to ink it in 2 days. Okay, but I just want to, how do you call it? Dress to impress. So that way, I have more likelihood of getting work. Okay, I'm gonna grab another pencil to fill in all the blacks. So right then, after I went to the convention, it was a WonderCon in San Francisco. Let me see if there's any questions. When you work, see, Snart, how much should an artist charge for the commissions? That's a very good question. So I say, when you charge a commission, you should charge based on how you feel your art is worth. Now, I'm going to tell you guys that I think it's always important to charge for a commission. Even if I mean, unless it's for your friend or something, but if it's someone that you don't really know, always charge for a commission. And I'm going to tell you a story why it's important to charge for a commission. When I was younger, maybe I wasn't a comic book artist yet. I was just maybe in high school, and I remember this specifically. And it just for those of you who are listening to this, this will probably tear your heart out. Okay, so I drew this character. I remember in class I had a friend that said, Walden, you can draw? Can you draw me this character? It's Mai, the psychic girl. This is manga character, Mai. It was originally drawn by Ryoshi Ikigami. Anyways, Mai, this girl, was like a really cute girl who was wearing a Japanese schoolgirl uniform. And my friend said she wanted me to draw this. So I decided I'm going to draw it, just for her because she likes it. So I spent like a good 4 days drawing it as best I can, like really, really good. Okay. After I drew it, and then I inked it. The inking was rough because I didn't know anything about inking yet. Ink was really rough, so I drew it, and then after I drew it, I gave it to her, and then she said thank you. Okay, so I turned around and just continued with the schoolwork, and because I was in high school and just like did my own thing. Later on, before the end of class, I passed by the garbage can and I was gonna throw something away, and then guess what I saw in the garbage can? It was that piece of work that I spent days drawing over, that I gave to her for free. Like, it took me so long, and then I saw that artwork in the garbage can. That hurt. Like, that hurt a lot. And then I asked, hey, Tiffany, why did you throw this away? This took me a long time to draw. And she said, well, I was doing this project and it spilled glue on it, and glue was all over it. So I just threw it away. And just like that, within that 1 hour class time, I give it to her, and then within an hour, she just threw it away. And that tore my heart out because I spent so much time working on it. 3 days, and I remember after school, I would draw it, and then I would draw and go to sleep. So that's about maybe for 12 hours to do that one image about the size of this. So that hurt. So ever since then, I thought, if I draw free work for someone, it better be, it should be for friends, or if it's someone that wants to commission me, it's always good to charge something so they put a value to your artwork. Because if you don't charge, they probably would just not care about the artwork. And I'm gonna fast forward a little bit more. I remember this story will also tear your heart out a little bit. I used to go to a photocopy place in San Francisco on Balboa, and then they actually, it was a place that had photocopies, and then I became friends with the cashier, and he would be nice. And then I would go there to make photocopies of Justice League of America, the stuff that I've been doing for DC Comics. And then we would talk all the time. Not only did we talk, he would be so nice that he wouldn't even charge me that 15 cents, to do the photocopy, and we became friends. And then I decided, I'm gonna give him like one of the original artwork for JLA. He doesn't really collect JLA, so he doesn't really know the value of it. Let me see, add some. Oh, it looks like there's a line over here. Let me see this outfit. Okay, because there's a line there, I'm also going to add a line because I think having more detail looks nice. Okay, add this line here, add this line here. Okay, I don't know if I want to add that line. Okay, then we add some taper lines over here on the bottom over here. Okay, fill this in black. I'm just filling everything in black. And I became friends with that person who run the store because he wasn't charging me stuff, and he was really nice. One time I was in a neighborhood, like it just so happens I was close to where he lived, and he goes, "Hey, Walden, how's it going? What are you doing here?" I go, "Oh, I was just driving by." "Well, what are you doing here?" "I live here. I live like right up here." "Oh yeah, I have my artwork that's on the wall. You want to come see it?" So I went in his house, and that artwork, the 11 by 17 DC original art that was published, he just used thumbtacks and then tacked it on the wall. It was near the window, sun was shining on it, and it was turning yellow. Okay, because I gave the artwork for free, they didn't put any value to it. There was a lot of holes with thumbtacks, and that didn't even tape it to the wall. It was thumbtacked to the wall, which is okay. I guess it's better than tape, but it was turning yellow. Okay, let me grab this. But ever since I started charging for commissions, and I started charging when I'm selling original artwork, people value the art more. Sometimes when artwork leaves me and then it goes to the client or the collector, they'll send me a photocopy. Actually, they'll take a picture of the artwork, and then it's all nicely framed and matted and everything. It just feels nicer when you see that. Let me see if there's any other questions. How much should you charge? So, how much you should charge is based on how much value you put into your artwork. I always tell people, like, you should charge at least how many hours that you're working on it. Okay, if the minimum wage in your city is like, say, $16, like in San Francisco, then think about how many hours you put into the work, and then charge that at minimum, at least. Okay, that's a good way to gauge how much to charge. If you're more in demand, and you think that if more people are asking you to do commissions, then charge a little bit more. If you don't have that much people asking you to do commissions, then don't charge that much. Some of you who are watching my video, you're probably like art students, like from high school or or middle school or whatever, and you feel like charging $20 is a lot of money. Sometimes it's okay because you're spending 5 hours on that. If you spend 5 hours drawing a commission and you're getting paid $20, what is that? 5, 10, 15, 5 hours divided by 20. You're only making $4 an hour. You can make more money at McDonald's than doing that commission. Just think about it that way. Okay, so charge at least based on minimum, and if people value your work, your artwork will be treated a little bit better. If you do free work, there's a good chance that your artwork will end up in the trash, and that will kind of like make you sad. The other day, I gave some of my prints that usually I sell at a comic book convention. Usually I'll go to a comic book convention and I'll sell it. I went to a friend's house that I gave the prints to, and you would never guess where I saw the prints. The prints was on the table, on the dining room table, and I gave the prints to them maybe like, let's see, a good 5 years. It was on a dining room table, and it wasn't covered with acrylic or anything. It wasn't protected, and they were eating dinner. The pots and pans and dishes was directly on top of the prints. So seeing stuff as an artist like that kind of hurts. And I didn't really say anything because I figured, if I gave someone artwork, they're free to do whatever they want. They can put it anywhere they want. But if you charge for your artwork and you put a value to it, the people who are paying for it will see value and take care of your artwork more. Okay, hope that helps. Let me see. Kai, hey Kai, how's it going? Hey, I'm going to answer questions. So Again, this is my going to be my first podcast where I talk about my career and how I started getting into the business, and tips and tricks, in a lot of ways how I interact with different publishers and all the business that I've done. So hopefully, all you can learn from it. Not only this podcast is going to be where I'm talking about my work, but those of you who are listening to the podcast live, like right now, you can also ask me questions, and I can also answer them as I do the podcast. Some artists, I've decided to this podcast because my friend Daniel, who's also in the channel. Watching right now, he said, Walden, you should do a podcast. And I thought about it, and I thought that was a really good idea. So I decided to do the podcast. I have friends, comic book friends, who've been watching some of my other videos, and they tell me, Walden, I enjoy watching your videos. I don't really watch your videos. I actually listen to your videos because as I'm doing my work, I'm listening to it, and it feels like, I have a studio mate. And then when certain key scenes that I want to look at, I could just turn my head and rewind a little bit and listen. So here, if you're an artist, if you're drawing, or if you're not even an artist, if you're someone who just wants to, you listen to like an artist, a professional artist, how he went from being nobody to being able to work for publishers and getting paid for his work, and you're just driving your car, just turn on your YouTube channel and just put this on and just press play and just let it run. Some of these videos I plan on, they're probably for a longer video. They're probably going to take a little bit of time because I'm doing these commissions as I go, and then I plan to finish a commission as I end before I end the podcast. Okay, and yeah, that's one. Let me ask. I get sidetracked a lot. Let's see. Sorry I didn't get to notification. How many gigs? Let's see. Kai, hey, what's up? Sorry, I didn't get the notification. How many gigs did you do till you got a constant job? And did you have to do any jobs on the side, or did Comics or Artist Alley give you enough? How many gigs did I do before I got a regular comic job? I've done a lot of independent work before I got Marvel and DC work. And I need to fast forward to some of the Marvel and DC work and how I got them. I don't know if I should share this. Maybe I'll talk about it in like the next video, because I plan to do a lot of these podcasts because I really, most of the videos I've done, the live video is almost like the podcast. So I'm gonna maybe save some of those. So for those of you who want to know, you can watch some of my other videos, these podcasts. Let's see. So I did do a lot of independent work. So I don't see myself as a regular artist until I started working for Marvel and DC. That didn't come until a year later, because I did do a lot of indie work. Like as I mentioned earlier in this video or in this podcast, I did contact a lot of independent publishers like Antarctic Press, Immortal Studios, London Night Studios, a lot of different publishers asking if I can get inking samples. And then eventually they hired me to do some of their independent work. Most of the independent work didn't even get published. It was like a writer that needed artwork done for free, and I did it, but it never got published. One of the artists that I've known, writers, his name is John O'Connell. Very nice guy. I still keep in touch with him. He contacted me and some other guys, and we were supposed to do a book together, but it just wasn't in the cards for him, and he just never published. I think we did a little bit of artwork, but nothing was ever published. So I'm going to ink this piece over here. I'm going to start tapering this line so there's a little bit of a light on the bottom because she's flying in the air. Okay, so I'm just going to taper these lines. I'm going a little bit closer so you guys can see. So it took a year before I started getting work from Marvel and DC. And from that time on, after that 1 year, I was getting constant work. It was always, I was always doing some kind of book for Marvel and DC. Not only was I doing work for Marvel and DC, I was also doing work for Dark Horse Comics, Image Comics, all at the same time. I also worked for Disney, doing some of the Toy Story projects. Not only did I didn't do Artist Alley or comic book conventions all this time. It wasn't until I won my first Inkwell Awards, like a comic book inking award, and then they invited me to have a booth there. And then there's a whole story about that. I'll save that for the future. I have so many stories that I want to tell all you guys. It's going to be interesting. You'll learn a lot from this. You'll learn what I've done. So maybe in the future, if you get there, you know exactly what needs to be done for you to be successful. I've done so many independent comic book work, but then I got all those books to send to the publishers as I asked them for to critique my work. So that was good. So it wasn't a year until I got that later. So I'm just gonna maybe mention some of the work that I've done. So when I did get work a year later, I was working at the bank full time, and I decided I'm gonna continue working in the bank full time because who knows if this comic book thing is regular, because I would see comic book artists in the books, but now when I was doing the inking samples and all this stuff, I started keeping track of names of artists and stuff, names of artists that are working in the books, names of inkers and names of pencilers and writers. Some superstar writers, pencilers, and artists, their names would appear over and over again. But then every so often you would see a penciler's name that just shows up for a few issues here, and all of a sudden you don't see the work anymore, or an inker or a writer. That does happen. So I thought to myself, I'm gonna like be safe and then continue working at the bank, and I'm not gonna quit my full time job until I really feel like this is gonna work out, and then we'll see what happens there. So I was actually working at the bank while doing the inking thing for Marvel and DC at the same time. Also for a lot of these other publishers. I remember bringing some of my artwork that I was inking and doing those during my break time at the bank, and people were looking at it. Wow, you work for Marvel? That's pretty cool. Most people didn't even know what that was. Like, are you working on a school project? And then instead of explaining, oh, I'm doing this for Marvel and it's freelance, I don't actually work at Marvel. Marvel is located in New York and all that. I just said, yeah, this is just for a school project. Even though I graduated school, people would ask, like, what's that? Like, coworkers would ask, what's that? Oh, I'm just doing a school project. Because I just look like a school student carrying like this little drawing board with artwork attached to it. So I did that for a good maybe 5 years. And then the artwork started getting really busy, and I had a lot of jobs. I remember working on New Warriors. New Warriors is one of the first regular series that I worked on. That was a regular gig. I also worked on Deadpool. That was also a regular gig. JLA was a regular fill-in title that I worked on when Howard Porter, the penciler, was drawing the regular book and John Dell was inking it. When John Dell was falling behind, the editor would have me come in and help out a little bit. Not only that, I was the regular fill-in artist. So as comic book titles, you have a regular art team. Sometimes the team needs a break or they can't catch up and do all the work. They have the regular fill-in art team, and I was working with Mark Pajarillo on that title. It was really nice. Like it was one of my first books that I worked on. I didn't really know how to do like tools and what was necessary to be good. Mark actually was there and kind of taught me like what to do a little bit, and I can talk about that more in future episodes. But right now we're just gonna keep it general, so there's more stuff for you to look forward to in the future. Otherwise, I can be on this live stream for like days and days. I have so many stories that I can tell you guys. Okay, so working with a lot of these independent publishers, and I was also doing stuff for Marvel and DC at the same time. I was really working hard, and like 5 months later, working at the bank full time, I decided I don't think I can do this full time because I'm not actually getting any sleep. This is kind of rough. So I decided to go from full time at the bank, and then I became part time. Okay, part time, because I still wanted to keep all the benefits, like all the health insurance and that's gonna be another podcast. All the health insurance and dental and vacation, all that stuff. We'll talk about that. Freelancers, and then how some of you will understand how a freelancer will work. We'll talk about that in the future podcast. So I went from full time working at the bank and then part time and doing comics. And it wasn't until I worked in the bank for about 10 years. right after college, and 10 years I was doing comics at the same time, indie comics and Marvel and DC comics at the same time. It was kind of nice. I was working at the bank and had all these friends that I work with, and I would give them a photocopy. I mean, I would give them the actual published book when they came in. It was funny. And we add some shadows to the backside of here, just give it more depth to the some of the background here. Okay, I need some black tones in here because otherwise it just looks kind of like plain over here. Yeah, some shadows here. And then about 10 years later, I decided, I think, Walden, I think it's time for you to give up working in the bank and then do this comic book gig full time, because it just the work just kept growing. I call it snowballing. It just getting bigger and bigger. Projects were better and better, and then I was in demand. And not only was I working for Marvel and DC at the same time, I was working for the different editorial offices. So what that means is I was working for the Avengers office. I was working for the Spider office, the X-Men office, and so forth. And those editors didn't really know that I was working for each office. And then sometimes when they find out that, oh, you're working with the same office, I think we made a mistake. We need you. We need you to have more time on this project. So we're gonna take you off of the Avengers and put you on X-Men. So that was when I knew that, okay, I really need to not work at the bank anymore and concentrate full time. So that's when I gave up working at the bank and started drawing comic books full time. And then later on, there was other things that came up, and then we'll talk about that later. How I became a art instructor at the Academy of Art University, and how I started teaching at other places, and all that fun stuff. So I'll talk about that in future episodes. So stay tuned for that. Let me see if there's any other questions. I answer them as I go. Let's see. Also, we have balance of. Let me see how much. Okay, Kai wrote. Also, how do you balance your comic work life and regular life? Like, do you have a set amount of time you're gonna work? Like, for example, like 3 to 6. So when I was doing comic books, when I quit working at the bank and I was working on comic books, so being a freelance artist, I work in comics and I work at home. So basically, I feel like when I'm at home, that is my home time. I'm married, I have kids, and then I'm able to take care of my kids more. When they needed me to be there in their school, I was always the parent that was able to be there, because being a freelance artist, I'm working at home. I can step away from work anytime I need to, and then I can be at the parents teacher conference. If there's an emergency, if my father-in-law need to go to the emergency room and my wife is like can't get there in time or whatever, I would be the one who would be able to take care of stuff. I was the person who was able to save the day. Like there's an emergency, wife can't get there, daughter needs to be picked up and so forth and whatnot. I will be the one there. Not only that, you would think that being a professional comic book artist will leave you no time. It gave me extra time. Like, not only did it give me extra time, when my daughters were growing up, I was their room parent. I don't know if you know what a room parent is. Room parent is when you're one of the parents that would help the teacher in elementary school and high school, in elementary school and middle school, to help out and be there when the teacher needed help. And I would be the room parent for all of middle school, all of elementary school, while I was doing all this comic book gig. Because comic book gig, you're not limited to an office space for 9 to 5. You don't have a boss that watches you all the time. You can do your art anytime. You just have to be disciplined. You have to be disciplined, and you have to turn in your artwork. If you don't turn in your artwork, you're not going to get much work done. Okay, if you're not going to get much work done, if you can't maintain your deadlines and the quality of your work suffer, there's a chance that you're not going to be able to get work in the future. So that's one thing you need to worry about. So me being diligent and being able to work on comic books and maintain, like, taking care of. I mean, I watch movies with my kids. My kids would come to my drawing studio and we would just hang out, and they would see daddy all the time. In fact, my kids saw me more than my wife. because mommy is always going to work and daddy's always home. Uh, we needed to go on vacation. I just up and go. I didn't really need to get vacation time from a boss or anything. I just got up and go. When we went on vacation with my family, my wife and my daughter, the only thing that we required was my wife getting her time off on those days, and then I can just go. I went on vacation. I brought artwork with me, and then I just do my artwork there. Hang out, go to Disneyland, and then do all the fun things together. And then during nighttime, I would just turn on. I'll be in the hotel. I'll turn on the lights in the bathroom and then start inking in the bathroom. I mean, I don't mean like sitting in the toilet. Like there's usually like a little room or a little desk. I would just move the desk around, put like little blocks underneath that desk to angle it up to look like to feel like a drawing table, and I would just ink at night. Okay, and I got used to being able to work long hours, and then that's just something that was regular to me. Working in comics, I remember going to sleep like 2 o'clock in the morning, and then that was like a regular time. But then, I used to wake up at like 10 o'clock in the morning, so I didn't really like wake up super early and then like try to stay awake for all that time. I just went and did my work, and then I was able to spend all my time with family. Some so you hear, it depends. It depends on what type of a person you are. You hear stories of artists these days that would say, "I wish I could spend more time with my family." I spent a lot of time with my family. I love my family. We spend a lot of time. Not only do I hang out with my family, I also hang out with my in-laws. Anytime they have events and stuff, I'm there. I don't miss any of it. Again, as I mentioned, I'm a very people person. I like people. If some of you who are fortunate enough to have met me at a comic book convention, you will know that you can always come up to my booth and talk to me, and then we'll have a good time like chit chatting and stuff. Let's see. Let me see if there's any other questions. See, also, okay, Daniel Little wrote, yeah, it's nice. I can put you on my screen while I draw. So I just join your flow and keep me focused while I'm learning from you. So amazing. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. I'm glad you feel that way. And sometimes when I'm doing artwork myself, I also turn on a podcast or I'll watch a YouTube video and I'm just listening to what artist has to say, especially if there's an interest in what you're watching. Like you're also a comic book artist, or you're also a writer in comics, or you're also a letterer or colorist or whatever that you're into, and you're hearing stories about one artist and then you're comparing what I've done to what's you've done and see if it's similar, and then you learn a lot. I'm pretty good at teaching. I've been teaching at the Academy of Art for almost 20 something years as well, for a very long time. So I enjoy teaching. Even on my YouTube videos, I like teaching people how to do stuff. Okay, let's see. Let me see if there's any other questions. Kai wrote, a school project, laugh out a school project. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. 5 years till you got constant work from what I heard. I think that's normal from the artists I have asked. It seems to be around 2 to 6 years. So I've actually got independent work within the 1 year. On the first year anniversary, I got work from Marvel and DC. So I was a little bit quicker. I did do a lot of practice over. I was really dedicated. There wasn't one day that I didn't do any inking samples. Just like today, when I'm doing like any kind of artwork, there's not one day that passes where I'm not doing commissions or sketching or just drawing on my own for fun. Because if you love what you do, it's not work. You're just enjoying what you're doing. To me, this is therapeutic. It doesn't feel like work. If I wasn't drawing for a publisher, I would still draw just because it's fun for me. I just enjoy doing the artwork. It's very calming. It's therapeutic, and it feels like this is me time when I need to take a break from everything that's going on. Okay, sometimes I'll watch TV. I don't actually watch the TV. I'll just have the TV on, listening to the news, or maybe have a movie on, and then I would, if there's key scenes, I would just like rewind it, go back, go back a little bit, or I would turn my head and look over. Sometimes I'll have my music that I'm playing, especially if I'm on a deadline and I need to get work done. I just turn on my what is that, the Google Mini, and just listen to music all night, all day. If it's not as pressured and detailed, then I'll just have the television on, or sometimes my daughter will come over here and we'll watch a movie together, and that's always fun. We'll just talk about certain things that's happening in the movie. And my wife also will come hang out in my studio, and we will watch a movie together, especially if there's a movie that she wants to watch. So family time, we're always there. And then as a comic book artist, I have a drawing table in my studio. I have a drawing table in my classroom studio. I have another table upstairs. I can bring my work anywhere in the house, and I can draw anywhere. So I'm not limited to one space. If I go on vacations and I need to draw, I can bring that, and I can use any chair, prop it up to an angle. Sometimes the chair, you just prop it up. I would just prop it up to the backing board on the floor, and that leaves it up, and that's a good angle for me. And I can just start inking. Just bring your art supplies. I don't bring bottles of ink because sometimes, like if I had like a bottle of ink like this, and I'm bringing it on an airplane, more than likely that will explode. I remember talking to Jan Dursma. She's a really good artist. She's one of the Star Wars artists. I told her, I brought ink to this convention. All of a sudden, everything exploded. Now I can't ink. And then she was telling me, you know what I do? When I go to conventions and I need to bring ink with me, I'll cap it tight. I'll use tape, and I'll tape around the bottle. That way, if there's any pressure from the airplane taking off and on, if it leaks, it'll still stay within the bottle. And I thought that was a good idea, but I didn't do that. I would actually bring microns, and then I would just ink outlines, and I won't ink any of the black areas. And then when I get home, then I would ink in some of the black areas. If I'm traveling at a convention that is closer to home, then I would bring a bottle of ink, just put it in my car, and just drive there. So that's a little bit easier. Let me see if there's any other questions. Let's see. It's good. Let's see. Kai wrote, what inspired you to start drawing comics or drawing in general, and who do you want to ink the most? Okay, so when growing up, when I went to college, all I wanted was to have a job drawing. It doesn't matter what kind of job, but I wanted an art job. Okay, I also could tell you that when I was growing up, my parents did not want me to become an artist. Because like everyone knows the term starving artist, you're not going to get paid. You're going to be starving as an artist. You're not going to make a lot of money. I can tell you that everyone that's listening to my podcast right now, that is not true. There is so many art jobs out there. There's so many art jobs that I can't do it all. That's how many art jobs are out there these days. If you want the job, if you're dedicated, you'll get it. Okay, it may not be in a work environment where you're doing it 9 to 5, but freelance jobs is an abundance. There's like a lot. Okay, let me see. What inspired me to start drawing for comics? So I didn't really think about drawing for comics until I met Arthur Adams, until I met Marlo Cuiza, and also the guy in Toys R Us. I think his name was Casey. I remember his name was Casey. Yeah, it is Casey. They told me that you can try doing samples, and that's how I decided to get into comics. Plus, I was already reading comic books at the time, so why not just try my hand in working in comics? So I gave that a year. So I was very dedicated. I want to make sure that within a year, if I don't get work, I'm not going to continue. I don't want to waste time. I did go to college for 4 years. Sometimes I think that I wish I didn't go to college and just pursue this comic book thing and see how that would turn out. But college did help me along the way, and I'll talk about that in future podcasts as well. Let me ink some of these render lines over here. Okay, and some of these lines over here. Yeah, so that's why I just decided to become a comic book artist. It didn't occur to me. until much later when I met those comic book artists. Plus, I was already reading comic books at the time. I knew a little bit about the characters, and I thought, wouldn't it be nice if I worked in comics? Given that the first comic books that I worked on were independent comic books, but it was still exhilarating, it was still exciting. And then when I got work doing Avengers and Marvel and Batman and Superman, man, I got to tell you guys, man, I was so spoiled as one of the new comic book artists, being able to work in comics. Because one of my first jobs working in comics was JLA, Justice League of America. I was literally working on Batman, Superman, Green Lantern, Wonder Woman, Green Arrow, all these characters. I was also working on Justice League Unlimited, which stars almost all the DC Universe characters out there. That was just so spoiled. I thought working in comics, you're gonna be working on these characters all the time. Over at Marvel, I was working on Avengers. I was working on X-Men. Can you imagine working on X-Men, Avengers, the X-Force, all those characters? I was also working at the Spider-Man office. Like I was working on all these like big name profile books, and I thought that was like regular. It wasn't until later when I started getting regular work that I was working on Avengers and Deadpool and New Warriors, or over at DC Comics I was working on Warlord or Justice League, and also like Batman, and also Frankenstein, the time that land forgotten, Agent of Shield, all that. That those weren't the main characters. Those were like other characters. And I thought, oh yeah, you know what? I was really lucky when I first started out because I was working on all these popular characters. So that was pretty exciting, and I don't regret any of it. It's like really nice to be able to work on all those characters. So being working in comics for so long, that I pretty much worked on almost every character that you can think of. Every character out there from both Marvel DC I've worked on. So that's very nice. Okay, looks like I'm going to add some more shadows to her face. Let me see if there's any other questions. See, Music House. Did you get any good tips from Dave Stevens? I really enjoyed his work. Yes. Dave Stevens, it was that only one time that I spoke to him where he was showing me copies of his work. He liked using a brush. He pulled out his brush and he was demonstrating how he would ink certain lines. And I liked his work even back then. He was very nice. This is before, like years before he like stopped doing comic book convention. He was just there and told me like he likes inking with a brush, except the only thing is that he would draw partially and then he would ink partially, and he would just go ink as he go. I worked with Dave Stevens maybe one time. It was a piece that I've done for Glenn Danzig. Glenn Danzig is one of the Glenn Danzig had a comic book studio. I think he's also a singer for, I forgot what the name of the group is. Glenn Danzig was promoting his comic line, Verotic. That's what it's called. Man, that Verotic, that brings back good memories. I was working with Verotic. I inked the piece of Dave Stevens, and then those pieces weren't published, but it was paid because Glenn Danzig, he was an art collector. He collected comic book art, and he knew of all this stuff. I remember going up to him at a convention, and I said, "Do you use inkers?" And here's my sample. He saw my sample, and immediately offered me work, and then called me. I didn't really know who Glenn Danzig was at the time. I can't remember the group that's that metal group that he sang for. But anyway, he was the lead singer, and then he would call me on the phone. We would talk, and then he's like very calm. He even sent me some of his music albums that he signed. I still have those signed. I kept it. So yeah, so he had me ink he had me ink Michael Turner's work, but it wasn't for publish. It was for his own collection. Anytime he had some pieces of really popular artist penciler, he would ask me to ink it, and he would pay me for it for his own personal collection. So I was also doing work for his publishing company, Verotic, and at the same time, I was inking like his commission work, like that he got, like for example, like Witchblade from Michael Turner, like a lot of Dave Stevens, some of the characters that he drew. So that was exciting working for him. With his comic collection, oh, you see, yeah, I can understand. Let me go back. See, Kai, yeah, I can understand that feeling of your someone in your family and not wanting you to pursue a career in art. Luckily, my dad is encouraging me, and that's a big help. I remember as a kid seeing my dad with his comic book collection, and he was always drawing. Yeah, he was the leader of the group Danzig. That's right. Yeah. Duh. Glenn Danzig was the leader of his scene group Danzig. That's right. That's what it was. Yeah. But, I never heard any of his music. And, he's really soft spoken. He's really soft spoken, really nice guy. I don't know if I saw him. He doesn't go to conventions anymore, but I know he still has his book being published. Like ever so often, I would see like in preview solicitation and like his company's name is still there. See, yeah, so yeah, a lot of times as a younger artist, parents didn't want you, but these days I think it's really good. When I was teaching at the Academy of Art University, they didn't have an art degree in comics, but these days they actually have an art degree in comics, so that's nice. Many schools have an art degree. I was one of the artists at the Academy of Art University who led the comic book illustration program, and after a while, they decided to have comic book degree. So that's very good. So over at the Academy, I was teaching a course called comic book illustration. And it was a course, like a 6-week course, where I would teach kids how to write a story, how to pencil, how to ink, how to letter, and if they wanted to, how to color on the computer. So that was a fun course. It was almost like a crash course. 6 weeks, there's very little to teach, but those kids did a really good job because they were also taking other classes at the same time. I don't teach at the Academy of Art anymore because there's just too much stuff for me to do. I used to teach, but I stopped teaching when the pandemic happened, and they started teaching with Zoom. And I thought, I don't like that. That's something different. I like the human interaction, like one-on-one, as opposed to just talking to someone on the computer and then seeing if they learned how to do that. Although Academy of Art, they had this course called Directed Studies where you would teach one student at a time, like how to draw, and then all of that is on the computer. Not even course like talking to people in person. It was like more like art review and critique. You would just send samples to each other, and then I would mark them up and send it back. And that took a little bit of time. Let me see if there's any other questions. So I'm close to being done with this. Okay, so yeah, so I'm gonna sign my name. And those of you who are watching this video for the first time, please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. This is my first podcast, so I hope you enjoy this. There's many stories, just like what I mentioned earlier, that I kind of I'm saving. You know what? Let me erase this first. There's many stories that I want to tell. I'm just gonna explain. After over 25 years of working in comics, I think it's time for me to share everything I know. So hopefully that you guys can learn it from. Share everything I know so you guys don't make the same mistakes. Hopefully some of the stuff that I talk about here will be informative so you can also benefit from learning and doing the same thing. I'll also continue making drawing videos, art review, and critique videos, but that'll be a different format than these podcasts. These podcasts is more personal, where I'm answering your questions, and also how I interact with some of the other people that work in the industry. Not that many people talk about that, so I think it'll be fun and interesting for all of you guys to hear how I approach talking to everyone that I met. How I go to BarCon. BarCon is when you go into a convention, all the artists and creators, they go to a bar, and when the convention is closed, they're at the bar and they're talking shop there. So I'll talk about that. Awards, how awards sometimes are done. I can talk about that. Comic conventions, how artists goes to comic conventions and how they're set up, if they're paid, or if they're like what it takes to be going to a comic book convention. So all of you know, setting up at a convention, all of that good stuff. Working in freelance, what to do. If you guys have questions on how to file taxes and stuff, I actually do all my own taxes, so I know pretty much how how being a freelance artist is when it comes to doing taxes. So I've done it where I had freelance work tax as well as employment tax, because like I said, I was working at the bank at the same time I was drawing. Okay, so that's this character. I don't even know the name of this character. It's on the tablet, but I think it turned out looking pretty good. Let's take a look at this character right over here. So I'm gonna open up and show you the reference photo that was sent to me, so you can compare the reference photo. So here's one of the reference photos. I think it's drawn by different artists of the same costume. So we have this reference photo that was sent to me, and then we have this reference photo, and then now we have this reference photo. Again, the collector who client asked me to do this had all these things, so I drew all that there. Let me see. Oh, it looks like the logo over here is black. I'm gonna fill this in, but I'm glad I looked at it again. So right here, I'm gonna give this part a little bit of black. Use my brush, just fill that in. Okay, fill all these stars in over here. Let me get rid of this tablet, get it out of the way. It's taking up so much room. I'm also going to be talking about some of the other artists and writers I met along the way, how we work together, and how we continue working together, how one project led to another, who some of the other comic book artists I met at conventions who made it big time, and how we also were standing in line at the portfolio review together. Some of the other artists I met who are big names, and the first time I met them and talked to them, asking them for portfolio review, so you can hear that interaction I had with them. That'll be a fun, interesting story that you'll be interested in hearing. What to do, what not to do, what to say, what not to say, how to prepare for a convention. Okay, let me sign my name right over here. When you sign artwork, I always have sign my artwork as close as you can. If you sign it here, there's a chance that you might get cropped off or something. I'm signing Walden, Wong. So that's my drawing of this character. And let's take one more look right over here. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit so we can all see. So here's the face, here's the hands. Very important. I'm really worried about the hands and faces. And then here's the body. Okay, right over here. All I did was sketch out the figure first. And after the figure, I would go in there and just draw the whole figure with the costume around it. So again, if you're joining me here for the first time, please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. Please share and hit like the button. You can learn more about me. My name is Walden Wong. I'm a comic book artist for Marvel and DC. You can check out more of my work on my website. I should actually write this down. Where is that little paper that I was using? Right over here. My podcast sheet that I'm going to use. I'm just going to erase number 1 and then redraw like number 2, number 3, or whatever. But I might as well write all of this down. You can check out my website. My website is WaldenWong WaldenWongArt.com. Right over there. Okay, that's my website to learn more about me, and you can see some of my work and my different social medias. And then I also have my Patreon page. My Patreon is patreon.com/WaldenWong Walden Wong Art. So if you enjoy this video and like to support, you can also check out my Patreon page, which is this one. There's different tiers of support as well as mentorship. So if you want to do mentorship there, check out my Patreon page over there. So one more look at this video. Thank you all for joining me on the very first podcast. I hope to make more. And please like and comment down below. Hopefully this will be a fun ride. I'm really excited about doing these podcasts now on top of all my other videos. Something for me to do at the same time as do videos. So thank you very much. Have a good day and take care, and happy holidays to everyone. Bye, everyone.